Hello, welcome to the Eddie V Show. It's good to be back with you on the last day of the week for the show. We got a couple things to get into, a lot to get into today. So I'm excited, but first, how do we like it? I feel like there's not a lot of stuff going on over here, but there's some stuff going on over here. There's a bookshelf. We love books. We like good mahogany. Got Our Lady here. Got a nice crucifix. So hopefully looks good. Let me know if you don't like it. I am not good at planning this stuff, so I just kind of went for it. And I was thinking I don't want to like right behind me. Maybe I could have done the crucifix up here. But let me know how you feel. And the camera I think is closer now and I'm like more kind of lounging a little bit. But we're having fun with it. Hopefully it looks all right for you. And so yeah, that's the new stuff with the studio. Just the beginning. Maybe we'll get some more stuff over here. But yeah, let's get into the actual show. That's just for funsies. And I think you can kind of see what my book's say on. I don't know how I feel about that, but that's okay. Or maybe it makes me look smart. I don't know. But that's not the show. Today we have just one. I'll get into some smaller things first, but we just have one topic for the show today, which is going to be this ruling in Texas from the Board of Education there on some certain readings that are required for different grade levels in public school. I thought this was a really cool ruling. I was reading about it. I'll read you guys a little section just to get you up to date, and we'll talk about that. So that'll be our big subject, and we'll get into that later. And then, so I have a couple of things I just wanted to briefly mention. What did I want to briefly mention? Oh, so, and then I'm going to let other people talk about this, honestly, but the excommunications came down from Pope Leo. I guess I will talk about it. I was going to let other people, I'll give my opinion. I thought it was, I mean, I don't want this to be taken in the wrong context. I was going to say, I thought it was cool. I did think it was cool. I just thought it was the right move from Pope Leo. So he decided, and so I'm pretty sure automatically the two bishops that were doing the consecrating and the four bishops that were consecrated, and then they are bishops now, just against the express will of the Pope, which is a schismatic act. But all six of those guys automatically excommunicated. But what the Pope did further, he first, from his dicastery, he acknowledged the excommunications, but then he also, I'm assuming, just excommunicated. By assuming, I mean, I'm assuming he actively did that instead of just it was automatic. Excommunicated all of the priests in the SSPX, and then excommunicated all of the people that are formally adhering to the schism. So that's a lot. That's a lot of stuff. Again, the formal adherence to the schism is going to obviously make it for lay people a little more complicated. I think the people that are in that category, they'll just know that they're in it. I don't think you and I have to worry about it. It's more a problem for them. I thought this was there was weaker ways he could have gone about this. I thought this was a strong way. It wasn't the strongest way. I think he could have gone stronger, but I think this was probably a good balanced approach. And again, I want to reiterate, this is not because he hates them, or I didn't think he should do this because of hate or anger or anything like that. This is for the sake of their souls, because the SSPX is getting a little out of hand. It's been out of hand, but it just seems to be getting worse. I heard a number, I don't even know if this is true, but 15,000 people attended the consecrations in Switzerland. So even just think of that number, 15,000 people in theory adhering to the schism. That's crazy. So there definitely needs to be a stop to this. But also don't want us to worry, because don't worry about it, because this stuff has been happening since the church began. There were schismatics, heretics in the first century, and there will be them in the last century. You just don't want to be one of them, so don't be a heretic, don't be a schismatic. So there's nothing much else I think needs to be covered with that. I think Tim Gordon's having a show tonight. I might watch a little bit of it just to see what he's going to talk about, but I'm glad it happened, like just to get some finality with that people saying, oh, they're not in schism, they're in schism, etc. just a lot of clarity. And also, I want to mention that Pope Leo, through his dicastery, said that not their confessions and their marriages are now invalid. So you cannot go to confession with the SSPX, which wasn't true before. Pope Francis had given them leeway to have valid confessions and valid marriages, and the marriages could be valid only if they got permission from the bishop that was in the area. So, yeah, I just love it. I love the clarity. I love the finality. It's good stuff. I will say, um, some people were listing kind of the. I didn't read the actual excommunication document, so maybe I'm a lazy person for that. But people were posting about it, showing the list of required actions by a priest in the SSPX who wanted to return to Rome. And I don't know how long that stuff takes, but it was a lot of stuff, which was kind of cool too. Give them the rigmarole. Obviously, I want priests that love the Latin Mass and are traditional, but I don't even think you can call the SSPX traditional. Schism is not traditional. So I think you can call the FSSP traditional, because it's traditional to adhere to Rome, to be obedient to Rome. That's a big part of the tradition. So anyway, we're gonna get off that. It seems to be done now. I don't know if I'll have to talk about the SSPX ever again. Possibly, maybe. But pray and sacrifice for those people that are in schism that they return to Rome, for sure. That was the first thing. Second thing I want to mention is our primaries for our local elections are starting. So I sent everyone this video of the debates for the governor. And I'll be honest, I am like illiterate. I am not up to date on the local issues. And it did seem like there was a lot, maybe because it's debate, they have to exaggerate everything. And I'm going to be honest, I have zero confidence that any of these people are going to actually help the state I live in. So it's pretty grim, but it was just interesting that I just have no idea I'd like to consider myself pretty up to date, pretty informed, and like half of the issues, I was like, is that an issue in this state? I didn't even know that. So, be involved in your local elections that are coming up with the primary. I'm definitely pro. I'm registered as a Republican. For the Republican side, to vote if there's a person out there that's America First that is like not endorsed by Trump, I would probably go with them. But obviously look into it and understand. I'm potentially going to not vote or vote for Democrat in 2026. I know I say this and people think I'm joking, but I'm not. People don't understand, and this is kind of getting political, but people don't understand how bad Trump has been in this term and in the first term. The first term, I wasn't really aware of it, but as this term's gone along and a little before it, I'm like, this is pretty rough. It's pretty rough riders. So, but that's enough of that. I just want to mention those local elections and just, yeah, those are in some ways even more valuable than the federal ones because they do affect you a lot. Some of these things they're talking about has to do with water, has to do with health insurance in the state, has to do with schooling in the state. School choice is a big one. That's for Arizona because I live in Arizona. For our current governor, she is like super anti-school choice, it seems, Democrat. And so we do need someone who will support that for homeschooling and private schools and stuff, Catholic schools. But that's the second. And then there's a third small thing. So those are small things. The third thing I wanted to mention, I'm reading this book by St. Margaret Clitheroe, or not about her, St. Margaret Clitheroe. I've mentioned her a couple times. And honestly, she's great. It seems a little known saint, a mother, a wife in England post King Henry VIII separating from the church. So very interesting life, but I just think she's a great example for everyone, but especially for mothers and wives. And I love her. I love her as a woman. It's like, that's the type of woman I'm looking for is St. Margaret Clitheroe. I mentioned this before, just so witty, so joyful, but also just super about the Catholic faith, will not bend from it. Good wife, good mother, good, even like helping her husband manage the business, good at that, kind, radical. She's just a radical Catholic, willing to sacrifice herself. Literally, she was martyred, but also in the day-to-day struggle. So I wanted to mention a couple funny things. One thing, her husband, he's like, she was like an amazing wife because he didn't get martyred with her. He lived after her, which is just mind blowing to me. He left the faith, the Catholic faith, and adhered to the Church of England Protestant churches. But he even said about her, he was an amazing wife. He's like, the only two things that I did not like or was like not my preference was that she wouldn't give up the Catholic faith, which is like, okay, throw that out. And the other thing was that she fasted too much. I just thought both of those were awesome. I'm like, good for you, St. Margaret Clitheroe. The only two things your husband that literally, you know, apostatized can complain about you is those two things. Amazing wife. And another thing I wanted to mention was as a mother, she had 3 kids. And when she died, they were 14, 12, and 10, 2 boys and a girl. And she was described by her biographers and people that knew her like she was very on her kids. She was on them with the faith, but she was also really strict with them about fulfilling their daily duties. So they had tasks and stuff that they had to do, and she was very on them. And people can say like, oh, I want my kids to have fun and stuff like that, which it sounds like they did as well. But I think a lot of times nowadays we tend towards like being very lax with children. I don't have any children, so maybe this is um well, it's not hypocritical, it's some other thing. I don't have the experience, I guess. So it might rub people the wrong way. But I do see that we do have a huge laxity with kids. Even among Catholics, where like we don't want to be tough on them because we want them to know the love of God, which is a good thing. But like we need to be tough on them. We need to build them up into warriors. That's my opinion on that. And that's what makes life interesting is being a warrior for Christ, standing for something, believing in something, being radical about something. That makes life so enjoyable and happy. Some people would agree, but like, have they ever done it? They should try it. I love when I get persecuted for my faith, and it's not even violent. It brings a lot of joy to stand for the truth. And you can even think of the pagans too, like Socrates, stuff like that, or the infidels. But the thing, so I want to mention, she was very strict with the daily duties, had a lot of fun with them, was a very funny, joyful woman. And the what is the phrase with the pudding? The proof is in the pudding, is that her 3 kids, even though they were living in Church of England, the faith was being persecuted. Their mother was martyred for the faith for harboring priests and different things. And 2 boys and a girl, both the boys became priests, Catholic priests, and the girl became a nun. So if you need like the proof of the pudding, whatever that phrase is, that's there. She's like on them about the faith, on them about daily duty, is just delightful with them, is a good mother, is an attendant mother, educates them. And you get 2 priests and a nun. It's amazing. I think it's amazing. I'll probably be talking about her more, but I'm just obsessed with, this is the second time I'm reading this biography. I'm just obsessed with her. We need good examples for men who enter the married life and women who are entering the married life, as well as men and women in religious and obviously priests. We just need those good examples. And I just never hear anyone talking about her. So I want to get her out as much as possible. So have St. Margaret Clitheroe pray for us. I might have said Mary before. It's confusing. The names flow the same. But St. Margaret Clitheroe, pray for us. And for you ladies out there, she's awesome. For you men out there, she's also awesome. But I'm a man. I love reading about her. But it might not be for you. Or you can read it to see like what kind of woman is like, is that saint material. Obviously, she's from 16th century England, so it's going to look a little different, but that's okay. All right, so those are my 3 small ones. Hopefully that was small. But now we're going to get into the main story. I'm going to read for you. So this is happening in Texas, and it was like, it like blipped a little bit on the news cycle, but I just want to like, if you didn't see it, and I do want to talk about it in maybe a different way that most people are talking about it. But let's get into it. I'm going to read this whole statement. It's a little long, like 3 mini paragraphs, but I just want you guys to get the whole picture here. So it says, and this is mostly from the Houston Chronicle and Lexington 18. I don't know why a Kentucky news channel is like doing a lot on this, but I mean, actually, it probably makes sense that they're thinking maybe doing the same thing there. I'm not sure. So it says here, excuse me, it says here, the Texas State Board of Education has approved a first of its kind mandate requiring Bible stories and verses as required reading for over 5 million public school students across K through 12 grades. The decision passed on June 26, 2026, by a 9 to 5 vote of the Republican controlled board, makes Texas the only state with a statewide literary canon that includes religious texts, with implementation scheduled to begin in the 2030-2031 school year. So let me just stop there. So that's not the end, but should I just finish it? No, I'm going to stop. Keep note, like what they're saying here is like they're the only state with a statewide literary canon that includes religious texts. And that, in a sense, that is true, but in a sense, I would argue that's not true because even the secular, liberal, what have you people, like the LGBTQ, I would argue that they have text in schools, and that is like for them like a religious dogma. So it's not like no one's like trying to dogmatize your kids. It's just that what they don't consider it like a classical religion, but it is their religion, it's their ideology. So don't let that fool you. It's like, oh, this only the Christians have their text in the schools. It's like, no, no, other people have their text in schools. Even like fictional works, they're fictional, they're not a religious text. They're arguing for their worldview, for their ideology, for their religion. So it's a little misleading. I know what they're saying, and you probably know what they're saying, but don't get it twisted. Even for Christian, like if you read C.S. Lewis in school, if it's like mere Christianity, like it's a, it might not be considered a religious text, like a scripture of a religion, but it's obviously a religious work. Anyway, let's keep going. Second paragraph. Grade specific requirements include picture book adaptations of David and Goliath and Daniel in the Lion's Den for elementary students, while middle schoolers must read passages from the Sermon on the Mount. High school curricula will incorporate excerpts from the book of Job, the story of Adam and Eve, and the parable of the prodigal son, alongside classic literature like works by Charles Dickens and Jane Austen. Although teachers retain the ability to assign additional books, the state law mandates that these specific titles be read in their entirety. Let's stop there. That's the second paragraph. Couple of interest, like I think that's really cool. It wasn't like they went soft on it. It's interesting they did David and Goliath and Daniel in the Lion's Den for elementary students, but I mean, still cool. Sermon on the Mount for middle schoolers, amazing. And then some of those high school ones, Book of Job, Prodigal Son. I thought the Jane Austen thing was kind of weird. I don't know what that's to do with anything. She was like the most non-religious. I mean, I guess she has like casual, like mentioning people go to church, but yeah, whatever. Jane Austen's great though. I really like Pride and Prejudice. But yeah, that's actually great stuff. So I could have seen this as like a ruling, and it could have been some like nothing burger, but it actually has some good stuff, and it's required. Like they have to do it, which I think is awesome. Just the Sermon on the Mount by itself, having to do that, I think that's amazing. I wish I'd had that in my public school when I was growing up. All right, third paragraph. Supporters argue that Judeo-Christian traditions, we'll talk about it a little bit, that Judeo-Christian traditions are fundamental to American history and culture, while critics contend the measure violates the separation of church and state and lacks religious diversity. The mandate builds on previous Texas laws, including a 2025 requirement for 10 Commandments displays, awesome, in every classroom, and a 2023 law allowing schools to hire religious chaplains, also awesome. Parents currently have the legal right to opt their children out of specific lessons that conflict with their religious or moral beliefs. So, first of all, I say like Judeo-Christian, obviously in today's world, this is being talked about a lot. It seems, maybe I'm in a bubble. But yeah, Judeo-Christian, there is some Judeo-Christian, but a lot of things that are Christian are not Jewish. So I do want people to get away from saying Judeo-Christian. Maybe when you're talking about the Old Testament, you could say that, but even then, I'm like, the Jews and the Christians, we interpret that stuff differently. So you really got to be wary of that stuff. And then they mentioned the separation of church and state, which we'll talk about, and lacks religious diversity. I'm like, for me, I'm like, great. We want to win that battle, but we'll talk about that. And then the previous laws in Texas, this is probably Protestants doing this. This is probably not Catholics. In my understanding, Texas is pretty Protestant. Maybe I'm incorrect. I didn't even look into that. And then having religious chaplains, probably Protestant, but again, still really great. I think and we'll talk about that. And then it says people can opt out of having their children listen to that stuff. And that's fair because I think parents should have and the church teaches this, that the parents have what is it? What is the word I'm thinking of? So I'm having such trouble with words nowadays, but they have the initiative when it comes to their children's education. But I love this, and I think a lot of Catholics aren't going to like it, which makes me a little. I'm just like, guys, what are we doing? But we have to understand that we are in a war. It's funny because the church like does the best it can to ignore that we are in a war nowadays, like the abandonment of concepts of spiritual warfare, but also culture war. The church does not talk about a lot anymore. And I'm talking about like at the parish level. Um, I feel like Pope Francis talked about it in like a liberal kind of way, which is still helpful, but his thing was like, tolerance, tolerance, tolerance. And people say nada, 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 which was his motto, but tolerance, 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 which I don't want you to like misinterpret me there. I'm not saying like we can't tolerate other religions being around us. Ideally, you wouldn't have other religions around because those other religions are false and they could lead people astray, and they're also antagonistic. And not I'm not saying they want to like kill us when I say antagonistic. I'm just saying they have a belief that is contrary to our belief, and they want to thrive and we want to thrive. So it necessarily is conflicting. So people think we can just like sit around and like you can have just a street that cuts. I mean, not even that. People just think you can like live in like these multicultural neighborhoods, and that's not going to become a problem. And I think nowadays you're seeing, unless you live in like an all, you know, everyone in your neighborhood or everyone in your city is the same, which doesn't happen very often, but it does happen in America. You know that there is conflict, there is strife, especially nowadays with how much stuff is going on between Muslims and Jews, between Christians and Jews, between Christians and Muslims, between Protestants and Catholics, between I mean, even we just had these consecrations between um sects of Christianity, and that which is Protestantism too, but and the Holy Roman Church, Orthodoxy and Catholicism. You even have like in other places, not necessarily in America, you have like diverse Islamic sects warring with each other. So to pretend that like you can somehow get everyone, all these different religions and cultures, and they'll be fine together, I think is pretty naive, pretty far fetched. It's just never happened before. It's going to happen best in America or something like America because there's a lot of prosperity, economic prosperity. Economic prosperity can make people believe that it's possible for a certain amount of time, but eventually you're going to knock heads. And this has been happening before, but like if you think about the 60s through the 90s, you had a huge loss of religion and you had huge economic prosperity, depending on the years. So that was it almost like distorted people's minds into thinking that yeah, all the religions because they don't even matter, they can all just live together. All the different cultures, no matter where you are in the world, no matter what you hold to, what language you speak, you can just get along. And it's like no, you actually can't get along. And I say can't, I want to be I want to be straightforward, but I also want to be careful in my words. I think there's a certain status quo that can sometimes form historically. A good example of this is the Christians, the Muslims, and the Jews in the Levant for certain amounts of times, but it would be for a certain amount of times there would be a relative amount of peace, but it would always flare up because eventually you just encroach on each other. Someone believes this metaphysically and someone believes that metaphysically, and that eventually collides. Or the cultural aspect, this piece of land is supposed to be dedicated to this or to that, and you disagree on what it should be dedicated to. Obviously, moral disagreements, which are apparent in every religion ever. I mean, I was telling someone yesterday, it's like you can't have two religions and they believe all the same things because then they would just be the same religion. So it's a necessity if you have a different religion that you believe different things and they will encroach upon each other. So I think this is a great thing, this Texas Board of Education thing, because as Christians, I'll say as the broad Christian sense, we need to be if we should think our religion is good, we need to get that into the public sphere and to get space for our religion as much as possible. And this will aggravate people, of course, but this is necessary because exactly the same thing is happening from the other side. And you can think of LGBTQ. I'll let you think of that. I know it's not like a traditional religion, it's not even a religion, but it's an ideology. And they're never gonna be like, as long as you give us gay marriage, we'll just stop there and we'll not keep going. If you have paid attention at all to politics and religion in the last 15 to 20 years, obviously even further than that, you have seen that they have not stopped. Not only they got the gay marriage thing, which is crazy, but now they're pushing even more stuff. And they will keep pushing until you are eradicated, your ideas, or you are eradicated, honestly. So I'm like pleading with Christians and Catholics to acknowledge this, to understand this. Not that we have to hurt anyone, we don't want to hurt anybody, but you have to be in the culture game. You cannot pretend that it won't come for you. So stuff like this, where we're like, yeah, let them read the Bible in school, actually mandated in school, is great. Because guess what a Muslim wants you to do? A Muslim, of course, wants to make required reading of the Quran in school, right? And if your attitude, if you're one of those Catholics, is like, oh yeah, well, like, it's equal, like the Quran's helpful and the Bible's helpful. It's like, I don't even know if you're Catholic. Like, that is not what we believe about our faith. Our faith is the one true faith. And if you're Christian, it's like Christianity is the one true, whatever concept. I don't know what Christianity is. Hilaire Belloc was like, Christianity is not a religion. And I tend to agree with him. But hopefully you get my point. It's like Christianity is the truth, not Islam, not Judaism, not Mormonism. And so we need to understand that. And we also need to unite on that. Good for these Republican Christians, I'm assuming they're Christian, in the Board of Education here, for ruling that as like, yeah, it is a good thing for any child to hear the scripture and to learn about the scripture. Doesn't matter what religion you are, because that's the same thing that Muslims will say. That's the same thing that Jews will say about the Talmud, about the Old Testament. So we need to understand that. We don't need to like hate anyone or anything like that, but we need to understand it is a war, a culture war. And another thing for separation of church and state I want to discuss too. So hopefully that'll put a pin in that. But there really is, and depending on what people mean by that, a lot of people think it's like, is the church like ruling the state or not? And then there's like looser interpretations that is like, oh, like there can be no religious values in the state, or they cannot push any religious values or any religion. Whatever you think it is, I don't even think any of that exists. There is always going to be a religion, whether it's like an actual traditional religion or just an ideology in the state. Because there are people that run the state. People imagine the state as like this like fugazi monster, or like an organism that is uncontrolled by human beings. Like, no, it is controlled by human beings, and what the human beings believe and act upon is what the society is going to reflect, what the state is going to do. Like, you have Trump right now, and Trump is able to act in certain ways based on his beliefs, his desires, which usually align just like ripping Americans off and like making a bunch of money, it seems nowadays. But we need to understand that. I think this is one of the biggest things I'm like trying to get through to Catholics, is like every decision you make in the culture is a part of a battle. That's why I'm so adamant about movies, what movies to watch, what books to read, what you support, what you don't support, what you give your money to. It's all a part of it. So I say good for them, for these Texas people, for doing that. And you should see the backlash. There's backlash. You got all the agnostics, the atheists, even Christians are like, we only do secular schooling for the public. It's like, what are you even talking about? They're putting like drag shows into the school. I mean, I might be exaggerating about that. I know it's happened, but it's probably not a lot. Hopefully it's not a lot. But they're putting this stuff in the school. You're reading these crazy books with, dudes kissing and girls kissing and stuff. Like, what do you think is going on there? It's the other culture is beating your culture. And I'm hoping these Texas people understood that. They're like, no, our culture needs to win out. Because to be honest, if the Christian culture doesn't win out, the Christian culture is capable of some form of tolerance. As in, like, you can have a Christian kingdom or a Christian nation, and there's like minority other religions there, and they can live in relative peace. You don't have that with a lot of other religions. Sometimes it happens for a time, but usually you're not going to get that type of stuff. I don't even know if the Mormons have ever ruled something, but I imagine maybe you could live under them. But honestly, like people like have forgotten because we've lived in such a secular state for so long and there's been such economic prosperity is like if any of that shifts a little bit, you're gonna see stuff get real quick. Where you're gonna have the Muslims, the Jews, the Hindus, or whoever it is, they're gonna move quick on you. they're, because they don't live by Christian principles. They don't live by love your enemy. They don't live by that stuff. Name another religion that lives by love your enemy. That does not exist in those religions. So be wary. I don't want to freak you out, but I want you to make you aware of the battle. And these Texas people obviously know the battle. And I think everywhere else we should be moving to do this where we can. I want people to get educated, to get good jobs, to get power so you can do this. This is something that Nick Fuentes advocates all the time. So maybe I'm stealing his stuff, the getting power, being as best as you can. But it's just a general principle as well. So anything else I want to talk about with Texas? I think that's it. I just think it's so cool. I think that would have been so helpful for me in school to have read something like the Sermon on the Mount. Maybe I don't know about David and Goliath. Might have been cool, but I don't know if it would have helped me. Book of Job is obviously very interesting. So, and it's cool that they mandated this, but it also depends on the teachers. Which majority of teachers, as I understand, are super off the chain, off the wall. So that's going to be an implementation problem too. But I think this is a good start as well. I think I'm going to stop there. I could talk about this forever, but I think that's what I wanted to say. Let me know what you think. I can already see maybe people, kind of being like, oh, I disagree with that. So but let me know. Let me know and we can dialogue about it or I'll talk about it in a future show. But that's what I got for you today. Also, let me know what you think about the bookshelf art crucifix thing. I love this picture. Got this for my birthday. It's very nice. And then got this from a friend. Also very beautiful. So thank you all. But yeah, let me know what you think about what I said, what you see, and I'll see you next week. Yeah, it's the last one today. So next week, God bless you, God keep you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.